Steffi's heart pounded as she crossed the threshold of Hayes's art school for what she thought would be a routine midday check on her son's latest sculpture, the polished marble figure he had insistently named Hope Rising. But the corridors were unnaturally silent, and the echo of her own footsteps struck her like a warning bell. The walls, once bright with student canvases, felt oppressively bare, as if the colors had been leached from them in anticipation of something dark. She rounded the corner toward the studio at the end of the hall, where Luna had told her Hayes was working, clutching her phone in one hand and a trembling image of her son's smiling face in the other. But the door stood ajar, and beyond it she glimpsed only shadows dancing across the hardwood floor. Calling out his name, her voice hollow with dread, she stepped inside and felt the click of a safety catch behind her. Before she could spin around, the gleam of steel pressed against her ribs. Luna's hand, white-knuckled, held a gun that seemed far too large for her slight frame, and Luna's eyes, once soft with remorse, burned now with a fierce intensity as she murmured, "You shouldn't have trusted me, Steffi." Panic surged through her as she felt the muzzle press harder, and she realized with sick clarity that this was no mere kidnapping but a message Luna intended to redefine the rules of their world, using Ridge's daughter as the pawn in a game none of them could have foreseen. Just as Steffi's breath caught in her throat, the heavy crash of boots echoed in the hallway and Luna's gaze snapped to the doorway, fury and surprise mingling in her expression. Taylor emerged from the shadows at Luna's side, hand raised in placating gesture, while behind Taylor, as if stepping out of a nightmare, came Sheila Carter, Ridge's long-feared enemy. Her trademark rasp of laughter already on her lips, and for a heartbeat Steffi thought she might be hallucinating, a cruel trick of her nerves. Then Taylor's voice cut through the tension, firm and urgent. "Luna, put down the gun. This ends tonight." Luna's grip faltered as she took in the sight of the two women who had built their lives on opposing sides of every battle, the gold-haired psychiatrist turned stepmother, and the dangerous exile turned matriarch, standing side by side with weapons holstered and hearts uncharacteristically aligned. Sheila's gaze flicked from Taylor to Steffi, and though her lips curled in what might have been a smirk, her eyes betrayed something stronger. Resolve born of shared motherhood, a bond that transcended years of betrayal and bloodshed. "Taylor's right," Sheila said, in a voice as cold and inexorable as steel. "This isn't about me or you. This is about that child." Luna's finger twitched on the trigger, tears brimming in her eyes as she whispered, "They took everything from me. My freedom, my sanity. I won't let them take Hayes too." Steffi's heart ached at Luna's desperation, but she forced herself to meet Luna's gaze, voice steady despite the fear ripping through her. "Hayes is not your pawn. He's my son, and I will save him." In that moment, the unlikeliest alliance of all began to crystallize. Sheila, moving with the precision of someone who knew every inch of a battlefield, stepped forward and spoke in a low, commanding tone, "Luna, drop the weapon. Let them help you help him." And Taylor, raising her own voice in agreement, added, "We can find you the help you need, but first, we bring Hayes home." Luna's eyes flickered between the three women, Steffi, whose maternal fury shone brighter than any safety, Taylor, whose compassion had once been her greatest weakness, and Sheila, whose very presence should have spelled doom. Instead, Luna's body trembled with the weight of regret as the gun clattered to the floor. Taylor lunged forward to catch it, guiding Luna into Steffi's arms as Stewart, the head of security, burst into the room alongside Finn and Ridge, their faces masks of shock and relief as they took in the scene. Luna collapsed, weeping into Steffi's embrace. The weapon disarmed, and beside her two mothers, once mortal enemies now linked by a common purpose. Ridge was the first to speak, voice choked. "Hayes, where is he?" Luna, between sobs, managed a hitching whisper, "Safe. But alone in the old photography wing. Please hurry." Finn sprinted past Ridge, with Taylor close behind, Sheila following at a measured pace, her senses sharpened by years of survival. Steffy and Luna remained behind as Ridge collapsed against a wall, hands pressed his temples, the weight of his daughter's peril crashing into him anew. In the deserted gallery of photographs, where dust motes danced in stray beams of sunlight and every piece of glass held a memory of artistry and loss, they found Hayes curled into a ball amid overturned easels and shattered negatives, his face streaked with tears, but miraculously unharmed. Steffy knelt beside him, arms outstretched, and he flinched at first, but when she spoke his name in that soft, unwavering tone he recognized beyond all doubt, he uncurled, burying his face in her chest. Taylor and Sheila stood guard at the door, backs pressed to the frame, sharing a glance that bore the weight of everything they had endured, the betrayals, the schemes, the tragedies that had pitted them against one another for decades. In that suspended heartbeat, they sensed a fragile new start, born of crisis and necessity, that neither could yet fully trust, but both instinctively knew they needed. Ridge arrived beside Steffy and knelt to take Hayes in his arms, his voice thick with relief as he murmured, "I'm here, buddy. I've got you." Finn and Ridge embraced, relief and gratitude passing between them as Taylor led Luna away to wait with a counselor, offering her a promise of help as genuine as it was tentative. Sheila lingered in the doorway long after everyone else had left the wing, her silhouette framed by the fading light, and when Ridge approached to thank her, her answer was clipped but not unkind, "Just keep your daughter safe. That's enough for now." As Ridge watched her walk away toward the exit of the building, Taylor by her side in a picture of solidarity none could have predicted, he felt the old certainties shatter and a new alliance flicker to life. Between the Forrester pride and the Finnegan resilience, between the architect's design and the artist's vision, bound now by the crucible of fear and the triumph of maternal love. In the hush that followed, with Hayes sheltered in Steffy's arms and the echoes of footsteps fading into the corridors, the two families stood at a threshold they had once believed impassable, a threshold where bloodshed and vengeance gave way, however temporarily, to unity and protection. And though the wounds between Taylor and Sheila ran deep, and though the old rivalries would surely resurface in time, the memory of that gunpoint standoff and the joint rescue of Ridge's daughter laid the groundwork for a fragile peace. A peace born not of trust alone but of necessity, of mothers reaching across the abyss of their past to save the family they both loved. In the days that followed, the art school's grand windows were repaired, new canvases replaced the torn ones, and life at Forrester Creations resumed its tempestuous course. But beneath the surface there was an unspoken understanding. When the darkness threatened their children, even the greatest of adversaries could become uneasy allies, and the saving of one little boy might one day pave the way for a healing that neither bloodline nor legacy could ever fully erase. Steffy's scream rang out like a fracture in the night as Luna's trembling hand closed around the gun's grip, her finger poised above the trigger, the barrel aimed unerringly at Steffy's heart, but before the shot could echo through the deserted studio, the door burst open and Sheila Carter, having followed the faint trail of Luna's origami warnings and the scent of fear that hung in the air, lunged forward with the ferocity of a mother lion protecting her cub. With a thunderous crash, she shoved Steffy aside, sending her sprawling across the polished floors, and threw herself in front of the bullet meant for Ridge's daughter. Time seemed to slow as the bullet tore through Sheila's coat and slammed into her chest, each millimeter of movement etched in impossibly sharp relief. The slight arch of her back, the widening of her eyes as she tasted blood, the tremor in her hand as she cradled her wound even as she reached out instinctively toward the fallen Steffy. Steffy, winded and wincing from the impact of her unexpected fall, crawled inches away, her hand brushing Sheila's sleeve, whispering through tears, "No, no, Sheila, please." Yet there was no saving the fierce glint in Sheila's eyes as she convulsed once, then twice, before collapsing fully, her lifeblood pooling beneath her like the final act of a tragic play. Luna froze, horror curdling in her chest, the gun clattering to the floor as sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each heartbeat, but her own pulse raced with panic and guilt. And without a backward glance, she fled through the gallery of half-finished sculptures and shattered canvases, her silhouette swallowed by the labyrinthine halls of the art school just as uniformed officers stormed in, drawn by the gunshot. Ridge and Finn, racing through the corridors at full tilt, arrived moments later to find Steffy cradling Sheila's lifeless form, her tears flowing freely as she pressed a trembling hand to Sheila's wound, but it was too late. The paramedics who burst in seconds after summoned the coroner, confirming the worst, Sheila Carter was gone, her final act one of brutal salvation. Steffy, bloodied and gasping, was helped to her feet by Finn, who carried her to the waiting ambulance where medics tended to her bruises and concussion, her mind awash in grief for the enemy who had become their savior. For the daughter of Ridge who lay hidden in Luna's clandestine lair, and for the family torn apart by this relentless game of betrayal and sacrifice. Outside, Luna vanished into the shadows of the abandoned loading docks, her boots splashing through puddles, her breath ragged, the echoes of sirens chasing her like ghosts. In her frantic escape, she dropped an origami swan stained with Sheila's blood and a single note scrawled in trembling ink, "This is far from over." Meanwhile, at the Forrester estate, news of Sheila's death struck like a thunderbolt. Ridge fell to his knees in the grand foyer, steepled hands covering his face as the weight of his daughter's near. Death and Sheila's ultimate sacrifice crashed over him in a wave of remorse and fury. Taylor, summoned urgently from her home, arrived to find Steffy recovering on a hospital bed, bandages swathing her side, and Ridge standing guard, his shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. With the world outside cloaked in darkness, they held vigil beside Sheila's body as the coroner took her away, and tears flowed freely, Taylor for the friend she had once condemned, Steffy for the complexity of love and hate entwined in a single soul, Ridge for the woman he had loved, lost, and now lost again. Finn, desperate to protect his family's fragile peace, vowed to the officers that Luna would be caught, piecing together the route she must have taken through the school's back corridors and the security camera footage that showed her fleeing into the alley behind the building. He secured every exit with officers. Lee Finnegan authorized a citywide manhunt, leveraging her resources to trace Luna's every move, circulating her photo to patrol cars and private investigators, and offering a reward for information leading to her capture. Steffy, though still pale from the fall and shock, insisted on providing her statement, her voice wavering but resolute, describing Luna's desperate eyes, Sheila's final heroism, and the exact layout of the studio where Luna had once again threatened their child. The hospital corridors buzzed with reporters hoping for detail, but Steffy, under Ridge's protective arm, refused comment beyond a brief acknowledgement of gratitude to those who saved her life. Yet, even as the family regrouped, bound by loss and relief, the unanswered question lingered: would Luna escape justice? In the shadowed alleys of Los Angeles, Luna, dressed in a borrowed hoodie and clutching the origami crane, moved with cat-like caution, her heart pounding with the knowledge that every patrol car could be looking for her, every stranger on the street could be an informant. She ducked into a dingy laundromat, stuffing the bloody swan into a locker and leaving behind only a single white crane folded neatly atop a pile of quarter-studded denim, a mocking invitation proving she still held the next move. Meanwhile, Finn and Ridge secured the art school as a crime scene, detectives dusted for prints on the gun, and forensic teams cataloged every scrap of evidence Luna had left behind, the tip of a black glove, a hairpin stamped with Luna's old patient ID, and the origami crane that would be the key to tracing her path. Taylor, in a rare moment of steel, oversaw the securing of the evidence room, determined that Luna's mania would not overshadow Sheila's memory or Hayes' safety. At Sheila's funeral in the Forrester family mausoleum, the elite and the broken mourning coalesced, Ridge in somber black, Steffy clutching Finn's hand, Taylor offering a quiet eulogy that acknowledged Sheila's capacity for both harm and heroism, and even Luna's name echoing through the vaulted corridors as the perpetrator who had drawn Sheila back into their lives one last time. The casket closed with a finality that resonated with the click of a metronome, and as the mourners filed out into the waning afternoon light, the wind stirred a scattering of white origami cranes lodged in the stone planters, as if Luna herself had left a silent benediction or a sinister curse. Back at the Forrester living room, Ridge turned to Taylor and Finn, voice hushed but resolute. "We owe Sheila everything. We must continue her fight for Hayes, for Steffy, for our family." Lee Finnegan, arriving with news of new leads, an eyewitness who saw Luna boarding a freight train northbound, vowed to keep the manhunt alive, sending bounty hunters into the hills and tapping into private networks until Luna was found. And high above the city lights, Luna looked out from a rusted train car window, clutching the origami crane like a talisman, tears mingling with rain on her face as she whispered, "I will win this game," even as the distant wail of sirens drowned her words. In the aftermath of blood spilled and lives saved, the Forrester and Finnegan families steeled themselves for the next chapter of the war Luna had unleashed, a chapter in which justice and vengeance would collide, where the memory of Sheila's sacrifice would inspire a relentless pursuit, and where the ultimate question hung in the air like unlatched gunpowder. Could a hunted woman driven by madness slip through the net woven by those she had betrayed, or would the origami swan she dropped become the final piece that seals her fate?